Welcome back. You are tuned in to Traders Nation. My pleasure to have with us here today book author Jim Bouchard. The author, Dynamic Components of Personal Power. Jim, welcome to Traders Nation. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks. It's an honor. It's an honor to be on your show and be able to share these ideas in what's still a free country.
Jim, it's our pleasure while we still can, right, Jim?
Exactly.
Holy smokes. All right, first off, what does it mean to think and act like a black belt?
You know, what I'm talking about are some of the values that I don't think we've lost in this country, but they've certainly gone dormant a little bit.
Yeah.
Thinking like a black belt is really about pursuing excellence. It's about thinking about perfection, not as a destination, but as a never-ending process. You see, that's what a martial artist embraces. When you decide to live your life as a black belt, you know, you're never quite finished. You're never quite satisfied. You're always striving for a little bit more, striving for excellence, striving to be above the pack. And, sadly, a lot of people have forgotten about that, haven't they?
Boy, you know what? You're absolutely right. And it's okay. I don't mind mixing a little of a political and some sociology that's in this, because I think you're absolutely right, because these are things that we're talking on a personal, even on a professional level. And
exactly.
When we've get to a point where we need to be told what to do, when to do it, we're losing those personal freedoms of excellence. It would be a good example. How are we supposed to ever, get out of this rut that we're in as far as the economy is concerned, if we're going to sit back and wait for so-called excellence from the government to do this for us? We got big problems, don't we, Jim?
Well, and I'm sorry, I'm going to use a little bit of bad language on your show. I always do this, and two of the words that they've become filthy words in our lexicon, they shouldn't have, is personal responsibility.
Right.
And so what I'm talking about, it's really not about politics. It should transcend politics, and it's sad that people couch it in those terms sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever.
Yeah.
What you should be doing is focusing on constantly improving yourself. When we improve ourselves, we become more valuable, not only to ourselves but to the people around us, people we work with, people we work for. And again, sadly, that's been lost, and it's been lost at some of the highest levels of government and business.
Yeah, all right. Honestly, as Americans, I don't know where we're going to go, because instead...
we're going to win.
Jim, you know what? I love the amount of positive that's in your voice and that you're projecting, and I'm the same way. But right now, it's for people like you and me. It's much more difficult to win, and I know in the end we will, because because the tide, Jim, right now is kind of working against you and I out there.
That's okay. We love that, because again, if we're going to borrow from black belt mindset, there's an old saying in martial arts: knock down 7 times, get up 8.
Right.
And that's why I have so much faith. A lot of my work is really geared toward the entrepreneur, the small business person.
Right. All right.
And I have so much faith in the entrepreneurial spirit of America, because we get knocked down all the time. The thing is, the entrepreneur gets himself up, dusts himself off, climbs back in the ring, right? And that speaks to the idea of perseverance. I mean, successful people fail. Successful people fail a lot of the time, because you're out there swinging the bat, right?
Yeah.
So you're definitely going to have your failures. Now, I'm not the nicey kind of motivational speaker guy, so I'm not going to just extend a platitude and say you always learn from failure.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly true, but
I
can remember one of my trainers when I was a boxer. He used to say this usually when our nose was hanging off our face, and he'd say, "Don't worry about it. You always learn more when you lose."
Sure.
Well, that's true enough. But then he'd add a little quip, and he'd say, "Some days you just don't feel like learning anything." Right?
I know. Well, you get beat up, but you know what? Yeah. Here's the thing about that, though, Jim, is people, when they get beat up, that this offers more of a challenge to them.
Absolutely.
And then instills more determination.
Yes.
To get to those end meets. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. It builds your confidence and it builds your courage. And see, that's what it's all about, because, getting to black belt, it's simple. It's not easy, but it's very simple. The secret of martial arts really is practice. And isn't that the same in business and real life as well?
Right.
But, you've got to be willing to get out there and expose yourself to a little bit of danger and risk. Sometimes I'm challenged when I'm speaking. People will say, well, quitting's not an option.
Right.
Well, quitting is an option, isn't it?
Well, for some it has been, actually, Jim, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, well, quitting, it's really the only option that guarantees a predictable result. If you quit, you're not getting anywhere.
Good point.
You see? Yeah. Once you're in action, once you decide to get in the ring, well, then everything's at risk and everything's at play. Now, I have a theory about why we got to the state. There's a couple of reasons I think we got to the state or the condition we're in right now.
All right.
And one of them is this idea of an entitlement mentality.
Right.
So many people have been able to, let's be honest, have a decent standard of living without really having to work all that hard.
All right.
You see? And the entrepreneur, it's a little bit different. The entrepreneur always has things at risk, always has, a life adventure in front of him.
Always have it out there.
Exactly. And more people need to borrow from that idea. If you want to think about it, you can certainly borrow from me and my ideas, think like a black belt, that's fine. Or borrow from your neighbor. When you see the guy next door out there running a garage or somebody running a mom and pop store or a hair salon, well, just take a look at them and see what they're doing every day and the chances that they're taking to try to be successful.
All right, how can we apply the black belt principles to business and even for personal success too? What would be some of the key things that we would want to focus on or maybe even hone our skills on?
Well, the number one, and I'm always asked of the dynamic components of power, which one's the most important?
Yeah.
And I always say discipline.
Sure.
Now, I represent some of these ideas in triangles, and I'll just talk briefly about the Kung Fu triangle, because that's how we generate power, you see?
Yeah.
And the three components there are motivation and discipline applied over time.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people point to greed as being a problem in our culture, and I agree that to a degree that's an issue.
Yeah.
But it's not really that, greed can sometimes be a positive energy as well, providing we're not harming other people
right.
in pursuit of our ambitions, right?
Right.
And I don't pretend to tell somebody what their vision of success is. If you're running a mom-and-pop store and you're making a few bucks, you're putting your kids through school, and that's what you want, you're successful. If you want to make millions of dollars and that's what you're going for, that's fine.
Right.
You're just not supposed to harm one another and step on each other's throats to do it. Now, that speaks to discipline. I think some of the people that have ripped us off, and I'm sorry again to use nasty language, but there's no other way to say it.
Yeah.
A lot of people have ripped us off over the last couple of years. Some of them, obviously, they're not successful emotionally or spiritually. That's where they're hanging themselves in their basements right now.
Right.
That's it. The discipline of being able to look forward, have faith that your abilities and your skills are going to translate into value over time, and do the hard work necessary. That's what's missing. People going for the quick fix. That's why you see people trying to rip other people off.
I think, it always amazes me how people begrudge others of success. Jim, it's almost like it's an excuse for their own life failures to sit there and just begrudge somebody for their successes. And success doesn't come easy. For most, okay, it does have. It takes all those disciplines, self-disciplines, to achieve that success, and they don't always do it. You can have all the ingredients in the recipe. Doesn't guarantee success, but a lot of times it does. If you work a little bit harder to get it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And there has to be a sense of balance. I mean, as I said, I'm not here to, I wouldn't pretend to try to define anybody's personal vision of success and happiness.
Right.
I know people that make very little money that are very successful.
Sure.
You have to have, all I know as far as success goes is here's a universal truth I've identified. To be successful, you have to have enough in three key areas of your life, and that's material, emotional, and spiritual.
Right.
But how much is enough is completely up to you.
Right.
Now, you're right, people sometimes denigrate, especially people we see as materially very successful.
Right.
And there's no reason to. That doesn't help you get where you want to go. Now, if you've reached some level of success and satisfaction, and you're not making as much money as the guy you see on the financial news network or whatever, that's fine. Just accept that. It's when somebody starts to complain and crab and moan about where they are and where their condition is. Well, if you're not satisfied with where you are, then apply these ideas. Be self-motivated. You can put the word self in front of all these components.
Right.
Self-motivated, self-disciplined, and then take the time necessary to get where you want to go. That's something we have a hard time with in our country.
Right, and we're out of time, but do it yourself is what we're talking about here. Do it yourself. Rely on yourself. Don't be at anybody's mercy, and don't wait for the government to do something that probably isn't rightfully yours anyways. Jim, where can we find the book at today?
JimBouchard.org, BOUCHARD.org.
Yeah.
Come on down, and absolutely. Good. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I'd like to have you back, too, Jim. JimBouchard.com. JimBouchard.com is where you need to go.
.org.
Oh, I'm sorry. .org. Okay. JimBouchard.org. JimBouchard.org. I'm glad we had a little extra time, Jim, to get that correct. Appreciate that, and I'd love to have you back on again. All right, dynamic components of personal power. Head on over to Jim's site today. We'll be right back.